Hi there, my name is McCarron and I'm a storyteller. I'm primarily an author and writer. I write books and long form articles for magazines and newspapers, but I also dabble in all sorts of forms of other storytelling. And the way in which I gather my stories is by going on long, slow journeys. I like to immerse myself in a place, in a culture, and in a landscape. And the slower I go, the more I feel that place. And I think this really helps with my writing. Most of my work is in the Middle East, and this is a region I first came to in 2011 or 2012, to Oman, actually, where I was overwhelmed with the culture and beauty of the landscape, and it ushered in this whole era and privilege of my career. It really has been the greatest privilege of my career to work in this place.
Hello, I'm Alastair Humphreys. I am an author and an adventurer. One of my most memorable and certainly most enjoyable expeditions was crossing a tiny part of the empty quarter desert in Oman, walking from Salalah in Oman all the way to Dubai in the UAE, inspired, of course, by the great journeys of Wilfred Thesiger. Wilfred Thesiger crossed the empty quarter desert by camel. I did it with a terrible homemade cart, which was ridiculous, but it was a wonderful journey. I loved Oman, the beautiful countryside, the generous, kind people. It was a fantastic experience. And so if I was going to offer some tips for trying to observe the local desert and to try and share that, it's important to remember that the things that you see and hear and smell and feel, you can take for granted. But people on the outside don't know about this sort of stuff. So when you're trying to tell your story, just try to not take everything for granted. You need to, if it's completely silent, you need to explain that and how it makes you feel. If it's really hot or surprisingly cold in the night, you need to explain and share that. So consider the 5 senses and how all of these make you feel, and try your best to convey those to the reader. Don't take for granted or assume that they are lucky enough to know what it feels like to be out in the beautiful desert.
And I love writing about landscape. I think it's so important. It's so much fun, but it's also such an important thing to do to truly represent the place that we might be traveling through for whatever reason. And so some of my top tips for that are to firstly try and really be present when you're in the landscape. And what I mean by that is that sometimes if we're in a group, we can be talking to those around us and distracted from the place we are, or we can put in headphones and listen to music, or just be lost in our own thoughts. All of those things are fine at certain times, but if you really want to try and understand the landscape, you have to really be present with it and to watch everything, to observe, to look around you at all times, and to try and see, how does this hill grow into a mountain? How does this desert change from one form to another? And part of that is really interacting with the landscape. If you're walking through or cycling through or traveling with animals through a landscape, you're already going to be very much part of it. But if you're in a vehicle, it's really important to feel how the vehicle interacts with the landscape, but also to get out, to feel what the soil is like, feel what the terrain is like, feel the heat, feel the cold, feel the wind, because all of this will help you see how those elements have shaped what you're looking at. It's very important to change your perspective as well. This is generally a tip for photography, but it's equally true for writing. To rather than just looking at the ground that you're walking on, at the terrain, try getting right down, looking at the grains of sand or the shape of the rock or the ice with your nose and eyes and an inch away from it. It'll give you a very different sense of what those particles are and how they're made up. And finally, I think it's also really useful one of the best bits of advice I ever got, primarily for interviews, but it's true for everything, is to listen at least twice as much as you talk. And when you think about looking at landscapes, I think what that means is to take it all in much more than you try and transpose any other thoughts on top of it. So when you do all of this, you then try and convert it into some writing that will represent truly how you feel and do justice to the place you are. And the best way to do that really is just to be truthful, right, in very simple terms about what you see, and really think about how it makes you feel. What is the impact that it has on you? What does it remind you of? What does it look like? I'm in a very bland environment now, but outside is a beautiful desert that I've been walking through. And yesterday I saw this incredible mountain. Half of it was this deep brown colour and the other half was this slate grey, almost green. And it looked like these two mounds of spices that you see in any bazaar or souk in this region of the world, except on just a vast scale. And so as I wrote that down in my notebook, that's how I described it, because that's something that can bring other people in. So you're looking for how it makes you feel, because that's what other people will respond to. I've got these two things that look like props here. I take pictures of everything. You can use a camera or you can use a phone for reference pictures, and I write everything down immediately as I travel through it. It really helps as you try and piece all this together. And the importance of all this is that if you do justice to a landscape, if you write down why you care about it, it'll make other people care about it too. And this is how we protect the great wild places of our world and the great areas of biodiversity. Humans have evolved to tell stories, and so if you do that well, you elicit emotion, you elicit care, and you'll elicit a response from people, and that's why it's so valuable. So really engage with the landscape around you. Feel free to experiment as you write. Be poetic, be sparse with your words, be direct, be extravagant. Let the landscape influence how you like to write about it, and share it with people and see what they say. And once you get that feedback, it'll really help you hone your own style and your own voice. And it's one of the greatest feelings to write about a landscape that you care about deeply and that has moved you, and to see that same effect in others. So I hope you all enjoy it very much, and I look forward to reading about all the wonderful places that you pass through and the reasons why it's important that we look after them all.